Hi everyone, welcome to Lola's Frugal Life. This is episode number 138. Today we're going to be talking about telling your money where to go. So please stick around for a few quick words from our sponsor and we'll get right into the show. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about how important it is to be intentional with your money and knowing where it's going. Like telling your money where to go and not just kind of letting it come in and then just whatever happens with it. Because if you're not watching where your money goes, it can easily be spent on things that are not really important to you or to your financial goals. So I really feel like there's so many people that might be struggling a little bit that could do so much better if they really watched where each dollar was going. So like this is kind of just like a simple, quick example, but my Amazon Prime membership just renewed this month. So it cost about $125 and it gets paid once a year on the renewal date. So each week throughout the year, I've been putting aside $2.50 out of each weekly budget. So when the membership renewed, I had $130 sitting there to cover the cost of the Amazon Prime membership. The $2.50 I was putting aside was for the Prime membership. So when I first got Prime, I paid up front at that time, but then I knew, okay, this is something new I need to start putting money aside for because in a year it's going to renew. So I figured out how much to put aside each week. That came out of our weekly spending budget. A lot of people would think like, oh my gosh, it seems like such a bother to put aside $2.50 each week, but if I had not put that $2.50 aside each week for this upcoming Prime membership, I definitely wouldn't have had it when it was time for that renewal to come because it would have got spent on something else because $2.50 is so easy to just spend on who knows what, a drink at Starbucks or whatever. It would come out of the budget. It would wind up getting used somewhere else. Money doesn't just accumulate. It winds up getting spent on other things. So this is just a simple example, but it can be applied to so many different situations and expenses that if you're not really thinking about what you're going to need to use that money for in the future, you can definitely more easily feel like you have it available to spend now, and you might make decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make if you thought of all the things that you needed to be putting it aside for. So obviously part of telling where you want your money to go is by having a budget, because a budget basically is you laying out what your income is, what your expenses are, and your expenses and your savings plans is where you want your money to go. So I do have at least one, maybe two episodes on budgeting. I'm not exactly sure. I'll definitely be doing another one probably in the near future. It's something I'm definitely going to cover often because it's really important, and it's not something that you just kind of do once and think about once and it is done. I'm constantly updating and making changes, and I think it's important because a lot of people might not even have a budget, so it's just important to think about and really get that started at least, and then improving it over time. So if you don't already have a budget, I really think you might want to consider putting one together, even if it's just really simple, just some kind of basic structure to figuring out what you have coming in and where you want it going, and then you can always improve on it over time. So, because the thing is that there's so many types of expenses that come up over the course of the year that if you're not planning for them, it's going to cause more financial hurdles than you need to have. Just because you have a budget doesn't mean you're not going to come across these financial challenges, but by having a budget and perfecting it over time, you'll see that those challenges will become less and less because there's so many more things you can plan for, and as things come up, you could say, oh, I need to add that to my budget in the future so that I know that I'll have the money set aside for that next time this happens. And then tracking your spending is really important because if you are not tracking your spending, it's very difficult to know where your money's going and to make sure that it's going where you want it to go. So, you might be spending more in certain categories than you even think because expenses add up really quickly, and it's very hard to keep track of them mentally as each day goes by. I mean, you can have like a $25 purchase that you make today, and then by time 4 days passes and you make another $30 purchase, you probably might have already forgot about that $25 purchase that you made earlier in the week. And then when you go to add everything up, depending on how much time has passed, it can really add up to a lot more than you thought it was. I think that's true for most people. I know it's definitely true for me. I know it's definitely true for other people I've talked to and other shows I've listened to. So that's why it's really important to track your expenses, because even like those little expenses, you might forget that you ran into the convenience store and spent like $5 or $6, and then you ran in somewhere else and picked up something for another $10, or all those things add up quickly. And sometimes if you're tracking, you might maybe make a different decision on that second purchase after you've already made a purchase earlier in the week, if it's going to throw you over budget and if it's not something that you really need. So it's really important to make sure you're tracking your expenses. And then you also want to make sure that you have a plan for any unused budget dollars, or even if you're not at the point where you have like a budget yet, but you still are kind of in a general idea, kind of thinking about where you want your money to go each week. Any money that you've kind of allocated to a certain cost, you want to make sure that you have a plan for it if you don't wind up using it for that cost. So like I talk to my kids a lot about the budget, even though my daughters for the most part kind of are sick of hearing about it, and I think they would prefer that they just get whatever they want, even if we go into debt for it, doesn't matter. But I'm determined that I'm going to convince them that it's not good to live like that. But either way, my son was asking me the other day what happens to unspent budget money when the new budget period starts. So does it just kind of get absorbed into whatever money we have and get spent on anything, or does it just kind of get lost? And I explained to him that it really depends on the type of expense that it is that we saved or put money aside for. So like, for example, if it's something that is most likely still going to happen in the future, then I will roll it forward. If it's something that I know is not going to happen, then it'll get reallocated to something else. So like, for example, I put aside a certain amount each week to cover medical costs, like doctor copays, prescriptions, emergency room visits, which we seem to have one every year still with my kids, but things like that. So depending on what's going on, with medical costs, sometimes you have years where you have a lot more costs than other years. So with something like this, if we end up where we saved up more money than we actually needed that year, I'm going to take that money and roll it over to the next year and continue to save our weekly amount towards medical expenses. So we'll have our regular weekly savings plus we'll have the money rolled over from the prior year. And the reason for that is because, like I was just saying, you don't know what's going to happen. You might wind up having a year where you have a lot more expenses than you expected, and then at least you can carry over what you had from the prior year. But if it's something like pet expenses, not like vet bills and things like that, because those you don't know, you could have like an emergency or something like that. But something just like regular food and supplies, like you pretty much know what that's generally going to cost. And I do build in like a little cushion in there, like in case we buy extra treats or a toy or a new bed or whatever. But if we don't wind up spending all of that budget, something like that, I would usually just reallocate elsewhere, because I will have a new budget coming up for it that's going to be sufficient for what we're going to be spending in the future. And any excess that we've accumulated that we didn't wind up spending from the prior budget, I will look at our other expenses and say, like, is there somewhere else that we are falling short that we might need to put this money towards? Or is there a savings goal that we want to put this money towards? I'll just kind of look at it, depending on what the type of expense is, decide, is this something that I want to keep for future, or is it for the same expense, or do I want to reallocate it somewhere else? But it definitely doesn't just like go into this random pot of money to spend. Like my son was asking if that was kind of what happened to it. It's not. So it's really just thinking about, if you think of like the money that's coming into your account, and think about where you want it to go. Like everything that comes in, you want to say, okay, I have this much money coming in this week. What do I want to happen to this money? And having a plan for it, and not just kind of letting things happen. Because when you just let things happen, often the money does not go where it could be best used. And if you're really thinking about it, you can often see that you can do more with it than you think if you're really paying attention to it. So if you're not already kind of watching where your money's going, maybe you don't have a budget yet, maybe you're not tracking expenses yet, I know that all of that can kind of sound a little bit overwhelming. But even if you just start somewhere, maybe just create like a basic little budget, just kind of like high level expenses and what your income is, and just kind of start to plan it out. Or maybe even just start by tracking your expenses, because really to create a budget you need to track your expenses first anyway. Otherwise you're going to have a hard time really creating a good budget if you don't really know what you're spending. So maybe just kind of start paying a little more attention, start seeing where things are going, start tracking, and just start small. And you'll see if you start small and just really start watching where your money's going and set up goals and figure out kind of what you want to do with the money that's coming in, you'll definitely start to see improvements, and you'll definitely feel much more knowledgeable about what is happening where you're with your money, and you won't be sitting there saying, well, I'm getting this money in each week, like where is it all going? Because it's such a good feeling to have like an expense come up and you already know you have the money set aside for it. It doesn't mean that emergencies aren't going to happen. There's still going to be challenges and struggles that come up that you just don't know where to get the money from or how to address it. Those can be hopefully resolved a little bit over time if you work on creating an emergency fund, which I do have a separate detailed episode on that. That would be part of your financial plan. But before you even get there, it's important to first really have a good budget in place and know what you have available and where you want your money to go. But the whole point is that even though you have these things that are going to come up, by having everything else kind of under control, it just really helps you deal with those situations. Because if you know where everything's going, you can more easily make decisions on what you can cut out to save money to help you out to get through those other challenges. But if you really don't even know where your money's going, it's really hard to make adjustments and make changes when you do have a situation come up that causes like a big financial hit. So just start small. Don't feel like you have to dive in and get this huge detailed plan right away. Just start somewhere and then just continue to build on it. And as things happen, make adjustments. And don't get discouraged. Just keep working at it, and you will see it will definitely improve over time. So that's kind of it for today. I just think it's a really important topic to think about. So just kind of do what you can to make improvements. If you're already budgeting, maybe look at your budget again and see if there's something you can adjust. Maybe there's some things that happen that you haven't added to your budget yet. Just kind of start somewhere or make an improvement. Maybe just start new if you're not doing it already, or if you're already doing some of this, then maybe just see if you can just make one improvement to make it a little bit better. But it's all about, if you just try and simplify it back to the easiest concept, it's really just about you're getting this money in and you need to decide, where do I want this money to go? I need to tell this money where to go and not just let it go wherever it goes, and then I don't even know what happened to the money after the week is over or the month is over or whatever period you're tracking your budget on. So that's it for today. I hope this is a little bit helpful to you. If you have any feedback for me or any questions or comments, you can reach me at facebook.com/LolaSFrugalLife. We also have a private listeners group, which can be found at facebook.com/groups/LolaSFrugalLife. If you submit a request to join, I check it pretty much every day, and I will approve you to join as soon as I see your request. You can also message me through Facebook Messenger. If you like this show, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd be kind enough to leave me a 5-star rating, I would really appreciate it. I just got another one. I'm really happy whoever did that. Thank you so much. It's supposed to really help with growing the show so that it can be found by more listeners. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a really awesome day.